We're gonna go.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to Bordertown Strange. It is not our show unless there's a hiccup at the beginning, and here we go again. I'm Pam.
I'm Jess.
I'm Mark.
I'm Enzo.
Yay! And tonight we are thrilled to be back live, and we're going to bring you along for the ride as we delve into the history of UFOs in Kansas and the 37th parallel and all of the fun that goes along with that. So we do hope you enjoyed the pre-records we did while we were out with Robert Prevost of Monstrous Arkansas and Brian Terrell of Red Dirt Cryptids. If you haven't had the opportunity to watch them, be sure to click our profile on YouTube or follow the links on Facebook and check them out. I did get to watch them when I was back in the States, and they were very informative and laid back, which is a great combination. They're both great guys as well as great guests, and you should give them a follow. So before we get started, let's talk a little bit about what we've been up to the past few weeks. Jess, what have you been up to?
Almost dying. So I had my art show opening. I did my cutoff. I got my artwork done. I got it in. Took a week long to get it installed, but it's all in there. So yeah, I am the summer artist in residence at the Price Tower in Bartlesville, Oklahoma. And my stuff is on show there at the gallery, and it's on sale all the way through the end of July. And you can go and see that anytime during tower operating hours. So please go buy it so I don't have to take it
checked out, and it pictures do not do them justice. They are amazing. There's 2 or 3 of them I would like to have.
I've been friends with Jess for a while now. Oh, I know. I've been friends with Jess for a while now, and I was blown away when I walked in there to see the level that your art has come to. It's just amazing.
Aw,
so
thanks.
Congrats. I'm so proud of you.
I'm always nervous. I was so afraid everybody's going to walk in there and be like, she's a hack. What is this crap?
Oh, Lord, no. They are so cool.
I just felt really jealous and inadequate.
Just, yeah.
Oh, that made my day. Thank you.
It's
I made someone feel inadequate. Yay.
Woohoo.
I can't draw a stick figure on a piece of paper and a pen with instructions and a ruler. So anyone who has artistic ability like that, hats off to you. That's great.
We need to put a link.
We can't pull off Hawaiian shirts like you do, Enzo.
No, that's true.
It's all give and take here.
Absolutely.
I'll give it a try. One of these days I'll give it a try. See if I can still hold my own.
Come to the dark side, huh?
Yeah. Yeah, so that's what all I've been doing. And I just finally this is my first week off, and had to fall right back into all of this stuff, which I love anyway. So yay. But Pam is back from her fancy cruise.
Oh, we had so much fun. I really enjoyed it. And I did bring back, as promised, the Bermuda Triangle Air. I don't have the pictures up tonight, but there's actually pictures of me holding the bottle out and gathering the air. So yeah, yes. It was fun.
And we've all told her she is not allowed to open them up on air because we don't want like a B-52 bomber flying out of it that got lost back during one of the World Wars or something.
You never know. It can happen.
Yeah.
Flight 19 flies out of the bottle. Hey, where are we at?
CT flies everywhere.
Yeah, you could make money with that. Portable wormhole. Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty wild. I don't know. There were some really strange ships in the background of that one picture, so I don't know. Or a ship, anyway. All righty.
All right. So, are we ready for some housekeeping before we
are
step into this? All right. So really quick before we get started, everybody just take a minute. If you're on Facebook right now watching this, take a second and like and share this podcast right now. For everybody that's on YouTube, give us a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit your bell so you can get notifications when we go live. Any support you can give us is great, so we can get our numbers up and get out to more people. It'll be fantastic. And also find us wherever you get your favorite podcasts, wherever you listen in at. We're on the regular podcast forums too. So you can get us like on Apple and Spotify and all of those. So go and like us there, and then you can listen to us babble on in the car. Dog. Because that's what everybody wants to hear.
I do.
I have to admit, I have listened to us too to see if it comes across as well. You know, on Spotify, it's usually what I listen to.
She's not vain at all.
Yeah.
Not a bit.
I don't listen to my own because I don't like the sound of my own voice.
Well, it kind of
I'm the
freaks
same
me
way.
out too, but it freaks me out too. But I want to make sure it didn't screw up. You know.
Yeah.
So, for sure.
All right. So, okay, we encourage everybody to hop onto the chats, whether you're on YouTube or on Facebook. We like the interaction, ask questions, hop in on the conversation, and stick around until the end of the podcast because we always do a couple rounds of the notebook game, which everybody gets to join in on. We also want to invite everyone to send us in your show ideas, your favorite topics, and personal stories you might have. We'll read them live on the show and probably use some of your topic ideas. Not that we don't have a billion sitting there waiting for us,
Right.
but we want to know what you want to hear too. So we're going to try to shuffle everything in. So feel free, just let us know, drop them in the comments or message us. You can go over to www.bordertownparanormal.com and email us or message us from there. You can catch us on our Facebook page, however you want to do it. Just let us know your stories because we are so interested in things that happen day to day to people. It's incredible, some of the stuff that happens. Anywho, so we need to go on with the show. So live from the 37th parallel. This is Bordertown Strange.
Woohoo! I like that. That's a great tagline.
Yeah. And I checked. Enzo, even though he's not in town here in Caney with us, he's in Derby, Kansas right now. He sits on the 37th too, the 37.32.44. So he's still right in there.
Nice.
He's within 100 miles, just like Roswell.
Very true.
Very cool.
Yeah.
He's closer.
We're not going to start. We're not going to start with the 37th parallel today, though. We're going to start with all of the big UFO happenings inside of Kansas. And we're going to start off with Project Blue Book and the official listings from that there contained. Do I get a drink? So we found some great reference material when we were really trying to deep dive into some of this so we could really bring you guys some interesting ones. And we're going to start with Clay Center. Now, I went ahead and made little mini maps of Kansas for every time we go to a new place. Now, I realize we do have a lot of Kansas and Oklahoma listeners here that obviously know where most of these places are. But this is for everybody else who may not know. And we're going to list some little small towns that you may not know where they fall. So we're going to give you just a little help with this. So the Clay Center incident, this happened back on July 6th, 1947. It's actually listed as incident number 89 for anybody who wants to go and take a look at it. One of the most important things about this particular incident is it happened during the exact same time frame as the Roswell incident that is ever so famous. The Roswell incident, was reported on July 7th. This one happened on the 6th. And of course, Roswell happened before the 7th, before it was officially reported. So it all it's happening all at the same time. So at 1:45 p.m. I'm sorry?
There was a feedback coming from somewhere. I'm not sure where that came from.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
I didn't hear it.
You didn't?
Weird. It was like somebody talked over the top of me.
Yeah.
Okay, back to it. We're probably going to have all sorts of weird things like that happening to us tonight. At 1:45 p.m., Army Air Corps Major Archie B. Browning was piloting a B-25 from Ogden, Utah to Kansas City, Missouri. He and the crew were flying at 10,000 feet, moving east over Kansas near Clay Center. A very bright object low and to his left, about 10 miles away, was spotted. He reported it to be round and shiny and was very bright and silver colored. After checking his position, which took about 5 seconds, he said, he looked again and found it was now directly above him. It seemed to be flying 1 to 2 miles off the left wing at the 11 o'clock position at 11,000 feet. The brightness of the object was great. The diameter was 30 to 50 feet and was traveling at the same rate of speed as Browning's plane, which was 210 miles per hour at the moment. Browning then decided to chase it. However, the object accelerated and shot out of view before he could. So what's even more interesting about this particular one is it's not the only sighting that happened that day. 2 more were reported at nearly the exact time in California and a 4th in Birmingham, Alabama. And that week, there was 24 reports of these same disc-shaped UFOs around the entire U.S. So it was like a big cluster.
That was not including Roswell, was it?
No, it's not including Roswell. I'm going to put my glasses on. I'm having a hard time seeing. Get to see me in my nerdy glasses.
Well,
welcome
to the nerdy side like the rest of them.
Oh, I've already been nerdy. I've always been nerdy. I can't get them on with my headphones. Hold on. I got it.
Hey.
But it was actually pretty common. Well, I shouldn't say common, but it was a common thing for like that week or so prior to that July 7th date for Roswell, all over, especially the western part of the U.S. A lot of plain discs, silver ones like this one. A lot of reports of one that kind of looked like, they describe it like the heel of a boot, where it's curved on one side and flat on the back.
Interesting.
And there's actually some pictures of those out there.
Cool.
Nice.
So if you'll go to the next picture. Okay, so I have something to tag on to this. So we have all this going on around the whole Roswell thing, but we have Kansas actually has a small connection to the Roswell situation. So this gentleman here is Army Colonel Philip J. Corso. And he actually claims to have come across files and artifacts from the Roswell crash, and he supposedly handled a lot of the stuff coming out of it. So he said that on July 6, 1947, while stationed at Fort Riley near Junction City, Kansas, that a convoy of Army trucks came in to bring up a shipment of crates from New Mexico from the crash on their way to Wright-Patterson in Dayton, Ohio.
I'm switching back to this. Fort Riley is actually just a few miles southwest of Manhattan, which is just below Clay Center. So it's all tying in right there too.
Yeah. So at the time, he was the post duty officer on the job at that time, and it was his job to inspect the crates as they came through. He claims he opened one and found a body floating in fluid. He described it as about a 4-foot human-shaped figure with arms, bizarre-looking 4-fingered hands. He said he didn't see a thumb, thin legs and feet, and an oversized, incandescent light bulb-shaped head that looked like it was floating over a balloon gondola for a chin. A little flowery with the explanations.
Wow.
If you go to the next picture, so he actually wrote a book about all of this. Is the book not on there?
It didn't get a book picture.
Huh.
Oh no.
Oh.
We'll
Yeah,
go
so
back.
he wrote a book. I don't have the name of it here because I was expecting it to pop up. It will be in our show notes, however. And in fact, here in a little bit, when Pam takes over for some other stuff, I'll look up the name of it to make sure that we get it out to you.
Cool.
I believe it was called The Day After Roswell.
It was by
Oh,
Yes, by Philip J. Corso.
that is in here, but I don't think it's in. It must be in a different order.
Oh, did
It's
it
in here
get out
somewhere?
of
It'll
order?
pop up. We'll see
Okay.
it here in a bit.
Yeah, and very interesting book. Interesting gentleman. Take a look at it. But apparently, if what he is saying is true, everything that they got off the Roswell incident was shipped up through Kansas and went up through Fort Riley before it made it to Wright-Patterson. So interesting.
That's, I mean, it seems logical that it would come through here.
Yeah.
Yep. So are we ready to move on? Let's move out of Clay Center.
Okay.
Did I move too fast on these?
No, that's some of the declassified information from that incident at Clay Center.
Gotcha. Okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm like, now I'm
Yeah.
panicking. I hope this isn't in the wrong order. Ah.
Can you move on?
Yeah.
There's Fort Riley.
Yep.
All right. There is Philip J. Corso.
Gotcha.
My apologies. I bet. Okay. The last picture was Archie B. Browning from the Clay Center incident. There's his book, The Day After Roswell. Sorry, we'll get our pictures in order. Yeah. Okay. So the next one we're going to talk about is in Decatur, Kansas. This one happened on February 18th, 1948. So this one came with multiple reports. It's actually kind of considered a flap in some instances because I'm going to talk about a main incident that happens, but there were all these small ones happening around it just before it happened. So there's about 1,000 theories on what this could be. So I'm gonna lay this out here and we'll make a decision. So we had multiple reports off of this, including flying saucers, fireballs, smoking vapor trails, and a massive explosion to boot. So at 4:50 p.m. that day on February 18th, there was a massive explosion so big it actually caused a mushroom cloud that shot 20,000 feet up into the air. It went up so high that people in neighboring states saw it. That's how big it was. The concussion off of the explosion itself was so bad that it broke windows and shook buildings, even in towns nearby. Like it went into neighboring towns. This is how big this explosion was. Now you might be asking, what does this have to? Yeah, what does this have to do with a UFO? Well, this is where it gets janky. So, the explosion happens. Many people, of course, witnessed this because
Thousands.
How could you not? Everybody had a different idea of what it was. Some people said that they saw like a rocket, like a military rocket. Some people, they saw a saucer. Some people said it was a cigar-shaped saucer. Some people said it was just a round ball that flew in and exploded. Some people were saying, no, it's a meteorite that came in and blew up. Way more than that, just every kind of story you could possibly think of. So the Air Force actually came in to investigate this and gathered up like 60 some documents and people's ideas on what they saw and everything. They attempted to look for debris and never found anything, which kind of shoots down the meteorite thing just a little bit, because you're going to find at least a little bit of rubble, and if it was a rocket that exploded, you're definitely going to find some type of debris.
Pieces of metal.
And when Jess says that this was seen in surrounding states, she's not kidding. There were reports that came in from New Mexico, from Oklahoma, from Nebraska, from Colorado, and even from Texas. So this thing was widely seen by thousands of people.
Now, didn't the government decide that this was a bolide or an exploding meteor?
They determined, It was meteor.
Well, you know
Yeah.
how they are.
They threw out all the reports and said, yeah, it's a meteorite,
Mhm.
which we all know we can trust, right?
Right.
Yeah. So, yeah, Pam's pulled up here. This is one of the newspaper articles. They were talking about how they were sure it was a meteorite that had blown up on re-entering the Earth here and had exploded super close to the ground, although they didn't really find much. They did, I will say, years later, they found something in a nearby field, but it wasn't in the right trajectory. But they automatically said, "Oh, well, this is what that was
Mhm.
from a few years ago." So a little janky. Anywho, so I was talking about, so besides this big explosion that happens over Mercator, there's several things going on all around it, leading up just seconds, some of them, before this explosion happens. So one gentleman, his last name was Sammons. He was a farmer who lived actually just 65 miles southeast of Norcator. So out in the boonies, farmer living out there. He said he was standing near his hog pen about 100 feet from his home at about 5 p.m., February 18th. He heard a noise and his livestock started to get restless. He looked towards his home and saw a funnel-shaped object hovering over it. He ran towards the house and then it lowered over the north end and settled near the ground about 6 feet away, and it stopped level with his face. It wobbled around for an instant, fire belching out of it and sucking it back in. It was about 4 feet long, shaped something like a funnel. There was a pipe sticking out of the back of it, and once it wobbled around, the pipe was sticking right at his belly, he said. Suddenly, there was a lot of spark showering from it, and the fire increased as if a fuse might have been lighted, and it took off in a northeasterly direction very fast, gaining altitude as it went. Now, I checked, and that was heading towards Norcator.
Mhm.
My wife heard it leave and ran to where I stood. They watched it leave, trailing smoke the whole way, and suddenly there was a great cloud of smoke in the sky, not more than 40 seconds after it left the yard, and a few seconds more, they heard the explosion. So, is this little object that came into his yard what exploded later? I don't know. There was 4 more sightings in his area leading to that detonation point of the same weird little round UFO kind of in a flight plan, apparently. So
Yeah.
whatever this thing was might have been what exploded later. We can actually track it back. There was a sighting of the same thing 6 days before that in Iola, Kansas.
Yes.
Yes, a craft exactly like that had been reported coming in from the south of Iola and turning over the top of Iola to the west and rapidly traveling and disappearing towards the Norcator area. So it was on a mission, apparently.
It was. And this picture is what was in the sky after the explosion. And I don't know if you can read that or not. It says this photo taken by amateur photographer Dwayne Ray shows the puff of smoke and vapor trail felt in the sky by the explosion of a meteor near his home 9 miles north of Norton, Kansas. The smudge of blue-white smoke remained in the sky over an hour as thousands of persons watched it. Residents of Oklahoma, New Mexico, Colorado, Kansas, and Nebraska were alarmed as the meteor streaked northward high above them into the heavens. This photo was made 4 minutes after the meteor exploded.
Yeah. Now, something else even more interesting I found on top of this. So this is not where it ends. It doesn't end at the explosion in Norcator. Just about 5 minutes after the explosion in Norcator happened, there were 2 pilots flying just outside of, where did it say? Lyman, Colorado, doing the rounds out there. And they actually intercepted a large multicolored ball of fire shooting from the Kansas area towards them with a dense cloud of smoke trailing behind it. They said about 100 miles southeast of Lyman, Colorado. So did it explode over Norcator or just like, I don't know, leave a fart behind and then just continue on its way?
In the afterburner.
Yeah.
Maybe it kicked in the after. Maybe it was damaged, and that's why it was in the area for so long.
Maybe
Well,
it went to Plaid or something.
Yeah,
Or
exactly. You got the Plaid.
it went to
It
Plaid.
certainly didn't sound like it was functioning correctly from that one farmer's direct
Yeah.
observation of it. It seemed to be wobbling around and sparks and fire belching out all over the place on it.
That
It
can't be
makes you wonder
good.
if they weren't trying to fix it and things did not go well.
I don't know.
It's pretty
If
crazy.
anything could be called military, I think this one might be, because if our military is going to come up with something, it's going to be the crap thing that belches out smoke
Yeah.
and has a pipe sticking out of it.
It makes it sound, just the physical description of it's like this thing run on coal. What is this?
Yeah,
thing?
it's
Yes.
like it's burping the fire and then
Sucking
it
it
like
back in.
belches it out
It's
and
almost
sucks
like
it back in.
bellows. Like it's got a bellows.
Chitty
Yeah.
bang bang is cruising.
Yeah, there you go.
That seems better thought out. I don't.
That is crazy.
All right, so let's move out of Norcator and that weirdness. So we're going to go to Howard now. This isn't too far from where we are. It's actually, it kind of
Wow.
No,
falls
it's
a little
not
bit
far
in
at all.
between us and where Enzo is in Derby. It's kind of a little midpoint, a little ways. This one happened on January 6, 1950. Let's see here. I found it in UFOs: A History by Lauren E. Gross. Page 2 at the bottom. Take a look there. There was so much great information in this book. So what Pam is showing you can actually flip to it if you want, Pam.
Okay. I was like, what?
These are the once classified files they've declassified. Wherever I could, I tried to snag some of these. Now, I'm not going to show you all of them because we could be here all day. They just have piles and piles, but give you a little look here. If you want to see these, get up onto the military archive documents pages, and you can find all of this here. It takes a little bit of digging sometimes, so don't give up. So the Howard, Kansas incident, the Inspector General Headquarters SAC contacted the district commander of the 13th OSI to make an inquiry into something witnessed by an air crew of a C-47. The OSI did look into the matter and determined the following, and this is under quotes here. This is what it said. On 6th of January 1950, Captain Robert E. Zimmerman, Captain Frederick E. Howard, and First Lieutenant Harold G. Simpson, while en route by air from Carswell Air Force Base, Texas, to Offutt Air Force Base near Howard, Kansas. The object, 30 to 60 feet in length, shaped like a football and bright silver in color, was proceeding in straight level flight at approximately 2,000 feet with an estimated speed of 300 to 500 miles per hour. The object was in sight for less than 2 minutes and then faded from view. The weather was reported as CAVU, and for you who don't know, that's Ceiling and Visibility Unlimited. So it was perfectly clear outside when they saw this. Now, this one in particular got a big fuss because these three gentlemen were highly recognized and would not have reported this unless they felt the need. I've actually read some interviews that Robert Zimmerman did, and he was like, even to the day when he was doing the interview when he was much older, he was still very unnerved by what they saw. They said it was just a feeling of uneasiness around this thing.
It shouldn't be there.
Yeah. So I went down, bless my heart. I went down through all of the military files looking for all the little specifics that you don't get to hear in the regular interviews. Dear Lord, don't do it. It's not fun. Anywho, so I went down and I got the inquiry notes out and I pulled out everything that was important. So Within those, it says 3 observers claimed it to be very bright silver. Howard added the object had a red nose, something you don't hear about in the regular reports of this thing. So this thing had a red tip on it. On the 25th of January, Lieutenant W.C. Kincannon at the Olathe Naval Air Base in Kansas advised that no reports concerning any unconventional aircraft had been received at the base. He further stated that the weather on 6th of January 1950 was clear with visibility at 12 miles and that no weather balloons of any type had been released on that date, nor had any flares of any type been released. Yeah, and like I said, if you want to see some of this stuff, you can go to the U.S. Air Force Internet Archives and just type in whichever situation with a date, and you'll start pulling all of this stuff up. Unfortunately, some of them are very redacted, so just be prepared.
You get like every 15th word.
Yeah. I've
Basically.
seen some of these where only the title was the only thing unredacted.
Yeah.
They declassified the title.
And nothing else?
Yeah.
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 Not unusual.
So if you'll move on to the next one. Move on to the next one. Huh. Okay.
That's never good.
No, I'm trying to I gave you the photos this morning and I have since I'm just refreshing myself. Yeah, so this is correct. So
not in order.
this is correct. This is the Olathe Naval Air Station that I was just speaking of, or the gentleman called out of to let them know. This place is no longer functioning as an air base anymore, but it is still there. I was just showing you a picture because this same day they had another sighting that the gentleman I just spoke of, who gave the report saying nothing had been said about anything being going on that day that was out of, a little weird. There was, and he didn't report it to those people. So right near this station where that guy just gave that report saying nothing out of the ordinary, a James F. Gray and a Robert Vandeveer were leaving work just nearby here when they saw a large, bright craft, round in shape, bright white with red flashing, coming from the center with a red nose. So I'm pretty sure it's the same darn thing. They estimated it was about 30 miles away from them and around 3,000 to 4,000 feet high. They actually climbed in their car and chased it for 10 minutes before it shot out of view. They called in to the Olathe Air Force Base to let them know, and they actually spent out a special agent. Oddly enough, not from there. They sent him all the way from Offutt Air Force Base to interview them and did a full workup. And it was all presented to this Naval Air Force Base the same day. But that dude turned around and did not tell them that anything else had been going on. So just to give you a little idea how connections are not being made, even inside our military.
Probably intentionally.
Probably.
Yeah, these are some pretty old sightings. These are pre-Blue Book, aren't they?
Yeah.
No, these are Blue Book.
Project Sign.
Oh. Yes. Mm-hmm. We're not into Blue Book yet. This is pre-Blue Book.
Yeah. So okay, I got lost myself here. Also that day, so we have a third sighting of the same thing. And I found this by accident too, kind of. So the Kansas City Star, which is a paper still there now today, they reported a vehicle crash happening that day. And under the subheader on it, it said, "Driver tells police a flying saucer blinded him and caused the crash." Right? His name was Manuel Zuniga, and I actually looked it up. He passed away just a few years ago. It was a real dude. It really happened. I couldn't unfortunately pull up the exact article, but I got a summary of it. And he basically said that he saw this big, bright white and red circular aircraft shoot in front of his car, and he turned the wheel in shock and hit this other guy and caused the accident. And of course, the police told him he was full of it and he was making up stuff so he wouldn't get in trouble for causing a crash.
So it's down at ground level, though. That's interesting.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and he was inside of Kansas City. So it would make sense. So it dove down in through Kansas City, popped out towards the Air Force Base where the two gentlemen saw it. They chased it for 10 minutes. It shot out of sight. And then it was spotted by the three gentlemen out on their run. So we have 3 sightings of it.
That's crazy.
But not connected. They were not
No,
connected.
they're totally
not
unconnected, even though
connected.
they describe the same
Right.
thing.
Yeah.
Right?
That
we move
that
on to
has the
next?
scent of the government all over it.
Doesn't it? Well,
All right, so moving on.
Connections, you know.
So now we're going to go way over to the other side of the state to Goodland. Okay. So this one, it's an interesting one. I've never heard one like this before. It's why I kind of added it in. It has an element to it that's a little different. So this one was spotted on April 29th, 1952 by First Lieutenant Ralph H. Bauer. He was flying a B-29 Super Fortress, which, to give you kind of an idea what it's the same plane that the Enola Gay was. Correct? Am I correct?
Yeah.
Yes,
Enzo?
that is correct.
Okay. That's why we have Enzo here, so he can correct us when we're wrong, because
can
I'm
check
sure
it.
we're going to be. Yeah. So he was actually flying out of Topeka that day. He described seeing a soft white fan-shaped light approximately 5,000 feet above, traveling very rapidly in a westerly direction towards the aircraft. So it had a fan-shaped light coming out of it, which is really strange. The light pulsated at an estimated 3 to 4 times per second, so it was flashing at him. As it passed over the plane at high speed, it was gone in 2 ticks of the clock, is what he said. The light was only seen with no visible fuselage. The base and size of the fan were sharply defined and the trailing edge indefinite. The base appeared approximately 50 feet across, extending to 100 to 150 feet at the trailing edge. No audible sound was heard, nor any radio interference noted. Object appeared to be about 75 feet long and had no aerodynamic features, nor any trail or exhaust. He estimated the speed to be about 2,000 miles per hour.
Holy cow. That's
Holy cow.
Screaming.
So he almost got hit by the Millennium Falcon.
Pretty much.
Basically,
Yeah.
a blinking fan just made of light. How does that even work?
yeah.
It's weird.
It is weird.
Sounds
So
like a
this
computer
one,
man.
With no sound.
So, with
It
no
was
sound.
sound.
So this one actually had an earlier sighting I found too. So earlier, 2 hours earlier, Sarah Wilson, an 87-year-old Topeka woman, was on her porch at 8 p.m. when she looked up and saw an oval-shaped light that was pale pink in color and traveling at great speed. She saw it coming from the north and traveled across the sky to the west. And the timing would have been perfect to where it fell. So they're assuming this was actually kind of mixed in with it a little bit. They're assuming that it might have been that same whatever that thing was. I don't know. It's
Traveling
crazy.
at Mach 2.4 or something.
Well, and the
Something.
description is pretty spot on with what
Yeah.
they were seeing.
Mhm.
But Topeka is quite a ways from Goodland.
It is
Mhm.
quite a ways,
Yeah.
but not at 2,000 miles an hour. It's not that far.
No?
Yeah.
Exactly. Topeka,
And they
on
thought
the map
2
that
hours
we're
later.
looking at, Topeka is between Kansas City and Manhattan, where you see that little circle where that interchange is right through there.
Mhm.
That's Topeka. I don't know why it's not showing. Pretty good sized.
Can you move it to the next picture?
Sure. I'm staring at the map.
All right. So this was within the file work from the declassified stuff. This is a drawing of that fan. Oddly enough.
It is fan shaped.
It's super weird.
Well, yeah,
It's
saw the
quite-
Millennium Falcon.
Yeah. If you want to
know.
get into some weird, get into these old declassified files.
Oh,
And boy, you just want to shake whoever the clerks were that were like typing these up quickly, because half of them don't know how to spell. Like there were some points where I was like, is this a code? So I don't know what they're talking about. And I realized they were literally sounding things out phonetically and spelling it that way because they didn't know. And I
Yep.
was like, goodness.
Well,
Anywho.
you know, the educational level of the average enlisted person has not really improved that much, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I know.
They're
Me,
not
that's-
there
that's-
because they know how to spell.
But now we have autocorrect.
Yes, now we have autocorrect
Yes.
and it's much better or worse.
Sometimes.
Or worse.
Sometimes.
All right. So
Spell
move
it
on
so
to the next
badly,
picture.
autocorrect can't figure it out.
Let's get really close to home, or at least for us. So I've known about this one for years. I'm sure anybody in our area that has any love for UFO should know about this sighting in particular. This one's a fun one because we're also going to touch base on a little bit of crop circle activity. A few of these that we're going to be talking about tonight are going to touch on some crop circles because they just kind of go together sometimes. In fact, we may have to do like a crop circle one soon, since we're already kind of laying some groundwork for this now.
I'm in, you son of a gun.
The reason why I call it the Pittsburgh one, but there's for those of you who don't know Kansas towns, that's Frontenac. That's how that's pronounced. It's a little tiny town outside of Pittsburgh, and this particular incident happened literally smack dab right in between. The gentleman that this happened to lived in Frontenac, but was driving to work in Pittsburgh. So he actually worked at a radio station, did DJ and news and stuff like that.
Yeah.
KOAM.
Yeah. He was actually.
And he was an amputee, which I thought was interesting.
He was.
I did not know that little tidbit.
Yeah. So this happened on August 25th, 1952. And actually we have the exact spot. So it happened on, if you're in that area, go check it out. It was on Yale Road between Frontenac and Pittsburgh, right near the intersection of Road 100. So it was right there towards that corner area right there.
And if you're back from my era, which would be in the late 80s, early 90s, there was a place called the Rockin' K in Frontenac that we would all go to. So if you remember the Rockin' K, you remember Frontenac.
Oh my goodness.
Because, you know, important stuff.
Right?
It was a place to be, huh?
It was a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So anyway.
Okay. So if you want to, you can flash it to the next page. There we go. Okay. So William, or Bill, they called him Bill, Sayers, 36 at the time. This was at 5:30 a.m. because he was driving to work early in the morning, had to get to his gig at the radio station. He saw an object hovering above the ground west of the roadway, off to his right about 250 yards at a horizontal angle of about 40 degrees from his car. And he literally said this. It was in the report. He was that specific about it. He slowed down to watch it. He pulled up to where it was, parallel to his car, stopped, slid out his passenger side quietly, and got out of his car and onto the road. As soon as he stepped off of the road, because he walked across the road to the ditch, once he stepped off the road, it rapidly ascended, continued straight up quickly until it was out of view. He said it looked like two platters or bowls had been put together. So your basic saucer shape. He estimated it was about 75 feet long and 40 feet wide and about 15 feet through the midsection. So
that's good size.
It's decent size, yeah.
Yeah.
It was a dull aluminum color smooth surface, one window in the section. Now, in this window, he could see the head and shoulders visible of one man sitting motionless, facing forward, or something man-shaped. The interior glowed with a blue light. There were several windows in the midsection that also glowed, but those changed colors. So they shifted through all these different colors as he was standing there. Along the outer edge was a series of propellers mounted on a bracket, so they moved in a horizontal plane and revolved at a high rate. He did say he could feel the air blowing off of this thing, right?
Right.
So this one also caused I don't know if you want to call it a crop circle. I've always been iffy about this one. There was an entire flattened circle underneath of it where I'm guessing the propellers blew the air.
Probably, yeah.
And whipped it
Yeah.
around. They say it's a crop circle because the weeds and the grass that it laid down were not snapped, but that would naturally happen with a hard air blowing over it for a while, and Lord knows how long it had been sitting there before he got up to it. Correct, right?
Right.
The thing that got me was they brought out people to interview him. They brought out police, and they brought out a detective, and they brought out someone from the military, although they're never listed who that was. But they basically told him after all of this that he saw a train, because there was train tracks back behind that area. And
Yeah.
they told him he'd just seen a train. It was a
Fly up
passenger
in the
car.
air.
Yeah.
At a great
I'm
rate.
really kind of suspecting that he may have seen something that belonged to the U.S. government, and they told him to shut the hell up.
That would be
Could have been.
nice too.
Yeah.
Very
I did.
That aircraft doesn't exactly sound like anything I'm familiar with where it would have, because you said it had kind of like wings on it, but the blades were on the wings pointed down.
Mhm.
Is that
And it
right?
had propellers.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. You don't ever
There were
I've
some
never heard of
experiments in
UFOs.
Vstall that
Yeah, 'cause, I mean,
sound similar.
helicopters, the first Sikorsky helicopter was like 1939. So, I mean, it might have been some weird prototype thing, but I don't know where it would have been flying out of to where it happened to be there.
It's an odd place. in the
Yeah,
middle of the field
maybe
and-
something somebody worked up in their barn.
that could be too. That same belching contraption we heard about earlier sounds like something that was made up in their garage for a 3-day weekend and a case of beer.
I mean, it doesn't sound like a bad weekend.
That's funny.
Okay, so before we move on, a little interesting tidbit about this particular one about the crop circle in general. So, this story is so popular, it made it into all the crop circle stuff. I've actually studied this crop circle a little bit, and there was one defining feature in it that kind of leans you towards crop circle underneath of it. They were the grass and the weeds were laid down without having been broken, which is indicative of a crop circle. However, in my mind, how long had that sat there and blown across that grass? It would have gently laid it down after a while. Interesting to know, however, this particular one also held the little orbs of iron down in the dirt.
Oh,
Oh, interesting.
Yes. And it did have some levels of the radioactiveness into it that a lot of crop circles have. Now, I'm not saying that that couldn't have come from whatever weirdo ship, if that's what it was floating above this. Maybe it was part of its propulsion system or something, But there's that. Food for thought. Right? But you will find this one listed as a crop circle with the crop circle people. So you will find the same story listed in
a
it.
little bit of overlap there.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, it is.
That is pretty cool.
Yeah. So moving on, Miss Pam, to Plainville, Kansas. We're going to go back up towards the middle here. Now I'm going to read this one, and we are going to start getting into area, especially with Plainville, where a huge UFO flap happens later on, like a huge one. So this is one of the many out of the Plainville, Kansas area. Couldn't do them all, so I just picked what I thought was the most interesting one. And you guys should know this one. This one came out of Pam's book too. So this one came from Air Force Captain F.A. Henney. This one happened the night of October 19th, 1959. He actually was training a student that day, and they did not list the student's name. They were flying a Lockheed T-33 Shooting Star jet trainer out of Larry Air Force Base out of Denver. Now, to give you an idea, a Lockheed T-33 has the front seat and the back seat to it. And when they fly, the trainer is always in the back seat. So the kid he was training would have been in the front seat and would have been having a full view of this insanity, just to give you an idea of kind of picture it in your mind. So flying east at 40,000 feet, going about 350 miles per hour. They were flying just west over Plainville, 7 minutes east of Hill City. Clear night, visibility 15 miles. Henney spotted a bright light at 7:25 p.m. coming straight at them, literally deadpan straight at them. Henney reacted quickly, turning the plane to the north or the right to avoid a head-on collision. They continued to see the light for another 20 seconds when it faded out. After a short period, it reappeared for another 30 seconds before heading south over the horizon and disappearing. So this thing was like targeting them almost.
Wow. So
I feel
so they're heading head to head.
Mm-hmm.
He takes evasive action, banks off to one side, and then they see it again somewhere later.
Yeah, so it shoots. He turns, but it stays on its trajectory and shoots right past them. They watch it for 20 seconds. It kind of fades out because they think it's gone, and then suddenly it just popped right back to the south of them on the horizon for another 30 seconds and then disappeared. So it just like zoomed right back up so it could see them again.
I wonder if it was the second one.
Oh, yeah, it could have been flying in formation or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel sorry for that poor kid, whoever he was training.
What
I
a
bet he crapped his pants.
It's time to wash out the flight suit.
Yep. Jiggle there. Who's that?
All right.
I like how they described the witnesses. The report described Henney as reliable.
Yeah.
Otherwise, why would he be teaching a new student how to?
Exactly.
Yeah. Kader. I want to put an unreliable person in the instructor seat.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Did I go too fast? Do I need to back up? Okay.
Nope. That's one of the report pages from it. I just snagged like one of the first ones that popped up.
Cool.
Yeah. Like all of these incidences are in there if you want to go take a look. I just didn't have the time to sit there and really look at them. Yeah, look at my schmeary circle around Wichita. Do you like that? Wow. That's my fat finger.
Oh, maybe that was like in lipstick somehow. It is.
It's just, I was like, mwah, Wichita.
It looks like she got derby while she was doing it.
Yeah.
I did. Okay, so Wichita, Kansas. This happened on August 23rd, 1960 in the morning at 3 a.m.
That we are deep within actual Project Blue Book land now, too.
Yes, we are.
Yeah, we have been for a while.
Mm-hmm. So this one's interesting. This one was spotted from the ground. So we're out of the airplanes. We're down on the ground. A family of 4 witnessed a UFO while out viewing the horizon for a new American satellite that had just been put up. A 37-year-old Boeing aerospace design engineer, his 34-year-old wife, and 2 daughters who were 10 and 12 at the time. Those poor kids, they got them up at 3 o'clock in the morning to go look at something shiny in the sky.
They saw something.
I mean, I've done it. Why wouldn't they?
They did see the satellite, but they also got to see something else, chasing it. So, if anybody's interested, the new satellite that was put up was an Echo 1A balloon satellite. It was sent up to bounce radio and TV signals. That's what this
Which I
thing
like, a balloon satellite or a sataloon.
did. A sataloon.
A sataloon.
Yes.
I mean, they used them. They were very cheap, and they did the job. Just used them as something to bounce an echo off of.
Yeah.
Yep.
Sure, there's variations of that very thing used around the world for radio and television broadcasts today, depending on where you go in the world.
Yeah.
Yep.
Cool.
So they spotted the object actually chasing down the satellite, it looked like, following its same path, but going much faster. Around 3:24 a.m. to 3:26 a.m. They described it as round and dull orange, which is an interesting one. It had 3 triangular windows that were yellow. It reminded them of a Chinese lantern. It seemed to be following the satellite and then disappeared. So if you'll flip to the next picture here. All right, so this is out of my collection. So I have a fun collection of like old UFO papers, and there's the American UFO Committee review.
That's cool.
Flying saucers, blah blah blah. And in this one in particular, the Science and Mechanics, they have inside what they call the Big 12. The most mysterious sightings to date. I can't remember. 1966 is when this magazine came out. So if you'll flip to the next one, Pam, this is this particular incident, and this is not what these people drew. They didn't actually draw anything for anybody to see, but the artist at the magazine did the drawings for these. So I thought I would just include it because I thought they were fun. This is what they envisioned this particular one to look like. And you can see I went ahead and just left all the information up there that came with it.
Wow.
Nice.
Kind of fun.
All held at arm's length. So that's fair size.
Yeah. It's pretty big, actually, depending on how far away it was.
I think it looks like a bowling ball.
It does look. Isn't there some brand of bowling ball that has little triangles like that on it?
Probably.
Probably.
I think
so,
it was funny. So don't take this photo for anything. I really wanted to put this up here for fun. So the family described this as being shaped like a Chinese lantern, which we all know are not round. I think the only reason why the illustrators made this round was because it said there, and you can read right below the illustration, about the size of a golf ball held at arm's length. So they made it a golf ball with 3 triangle windows on it.
They said sphere as well, but still, I don't know of a sphere-shaped Japanese lantern either. But I don't.
Yeah. I don't know
any.
But either way, there you go.
Interesting. That's fun.
That is strange.
Yep. And we'll get to see one more out of this magazine here in just a bit. So. All right. Kansas City.
Yay.
Yeah.
Except I
Here's the
believe
next
Brunswick.
illustration.
The Brunswick bowling ball has that logo with the 3 triangles. Interesting.
Well, there you go. There's a flying bowling ball. So this one happened on August 12th, 1961 in Kansas City, Kansas. I opted not to put the map up. If you don't know where Kansas City, Kansas is, you
go back and look at our other maps. It's on every one.
Go back to school.
Seriously.
Which one? The one in Kansas or the one in Missouri?
The one in Kansas, sir. The only one that counts. Okay. Sorry, I'm all right. Calm down. Okay.
Got a little heated there.
Yeah. Not today, devil. August 12th, 1961. 2 college seniors, JB and this poor guy. He had the best last name. His last name was Firkenhoff. Sounds like a threat.
What did you say to me?
I said to JB Firkenhoff. That's what I said. And Tom Phipps. They were leaving school, the old mission school on 50th Street. So if you're in the Kansas City, Kansas area, you can actually go and see this area. They were driving.
They sound like a law firm, Frickenhoff and Phipps.
And more like
driving. They were driving their convertible around with the top down on a Saturday evening at about 9 p.m. and they saw a low-flying aircraft, possibly in danger of crashing. They thought it looked like it might be crashing about 3 city blocks away from their car. The object wasn't moving, and they were actually able to drive right underneath of it. Because that's what I would do, let me tell you.
Why wouldn't you?
Yeah. So they drove underneath of it. They stopped their car and just stared up at it underneath something they just formerly thought was crashing. I don't know how smart that is, but it is what it is.
Alcohol may have been involved. I don't know.
Potentially.
They estimated it to be about 50 feet above the ground. It was described as slightly smaller than half the size of a football field. That's the weirdest explanation ever.
They're college.
It was circular in shape with lights around the outer edge that were yellow in color. It was solid and metallic, and they said it looked like a big oval-shaped sled. And I'm guessing they mean the round sleds that you can get.
Looks like a s'more. Doesn't it?
It does kind of look like a s'more, and now I'm hungry. Thank you.
Sorry.
You're welcome. So it was a big oval-shaped sled with automobile type running boards and lights on the running boards. They also said it had a high tail that was vertical and ran from one edge to the middle. It made no sound, and they claimed it was unnerving. They became frightened and moved away. At that point, the object went straight up and moved sharply to the east on the rise. It disappeared within 5 seconds. Now, I went ahead and took the time to look out east of the Kansas City, Kansas area and kind of tracked that along there. And I couldn't find any information on any other sightings at that time to kind of give you 1 or 2 extra to tag on to it. So I don't know. You would have also thought if it was in a downtown area like that, in buildings, I mean, it was only 50 feet off the ground. So just to give everybody at home a general idea, you know, a story on a building is usually like 10 to 12 feet. So kind of just imagine the stories on a building. It should have been like, bam, right there. I can't imagine how many people should have seen this thing. So I don't know. Maybe they were smoking something. I don't know.
You know what's interesting? I'm thinking back to what Enzo said at the beginning of all of this, where there were crafts that were seen that were half circular with a flat end on it. Mm-hmm. I wonder what this would look like from the back, you know?
Yeah.
Because it's got that high tail on it. I guess it would look different depending on which way you viewed it.
Yeah.
It's kind of an odd thing to kind of visualize what it would look like.
It is.
Before we get too far off, Pam, if you want to click on that share that I put down below, since Rick brought it up, that is the old Brunswick bowling ball look.
There you go.
Look at that. If you look, if you tilt your head to the left.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, we're all like
nerd.
So, I can see where that would be like what they saw.
Yeah, interesting. Good catch, Rick.
All right, so that is the end of my Project Blue Book type of sections. The next one I have is UFO flaps, but I think before we start in on the flaps, the precursor for some of these flaps was, I think, what's Pam's getting ready to chat with us about.
Yes. And before we move on, I just wanted to show, let me drop this down so we can see better here. This is a book that a lot of this information is coming from. It's UFO Cold Cases of Kansas. Very, very interesting information. And
I've read it. It's
friend
good.
and colleague Ginger got this for me. So thank you, Ginger. She's pretty awesome. Okay, let's skip
All
over
right.
to Delphos.
Yes. Now hold on to your pants, man, because this
Delphos.
one is wild.
Delphos
And,
is wild.
and it shocks me how many people have never heard of this. This is like
This
this
is
is
the
up
big
one.
there
deal.
with the Kentucky goblins.
It is. And something that we didn't mention at the end where Jess left off, Project Blue Book was officially shut down in 1969.
Mm-hmm.
The Air Force shut it down at the time. And what was interesting about that there were some scientists. There was like Dr. J. Allen Hynek, and if you're familiar with UFO interested in it at all, you probably recognize that name. He was a Northwestern astronomy professor and an advisor to the Air Force. And then there was also a Dr. James McDonald. He was the University of Arizona atmospheric physicist. They had both analyzed cases in the closing report from Project Blue Book, and they stated to their dismay that even the cases as written in the report did not support a dismissal. So there was no reason for the program to have been shut down other than the fact the government wanted it shut down. That was it.
Well, they just changed the name and made it secret.
Pretty
Yep.
much. They
That's
took the
what it
funding
is.
away from that particular area, and that's kind of how it went. Now, Alan Hynek, he had spent 18 years or so consulting with the Air Force on UFOs, and he felt that abandoning this subject, it was an academic crime, pretty much. He wasn't alone. Several scientists around the United States, they felt the same way, but they didn't want the negativity that could come along with being public with their opinions. So what they did was they got together and they started this group, kind of a covert group, and they called themselves the Invisible College. And included in this were physicists, chemists, biologists, NASA grantees, personnel at Oak Ridge, Battelle Memorial Institute, and on and on. Their only drawback was they lacked the funding that had been available when the government was leading the project. Research would have had to been done after hours, and all the scientific time would have to be donated, basically. So with that occurring, Hynek estimated they might be able to do research in depth on maybe one or two cases a year. So you're dropping from, I don't remember how many cases they were pulling in a year, but down to pretty much nil. So, this was from 69, so 70. And then in November 1971, along comes Delphos. And what Delphos was, well, let's back up a little bit. So there was a local, really good UFO researcher, field researcher. His name was Ted Phillips. And he learned of the Delphos case reasonably early, probably within a month of when it occurred. And he was really able to do some excellent field measurements and get some sampling and things like that. And he brought those to Hynek. And then over the year of 72 and 73, the universities of Missouri, Kansas, Northwestern, Utah State, Cal Berkeley, North Dakota, Illinois, and Florida, they were all involved, but anonymously, basically. There were people at NASA, Oak Ridge, and Battelle that were also weighing in on all of this. And what they found that many things which characterized the soil that was involved in this, it rendered it different from untouched soil that was nearby. And it just really seemed really strange. So there was a renowned expert on fungal diseases, and his name was Hubert Lechvalier, and I may have said that wrong. If I did, sorry. He was from Rutgers, and he was particularly valuable because he could claim that the ring, even though it contained some fungal elements, as do almost all soils, it was not the product of such an agency, which is fascinating right there, if you know anything about soil and the sampling of such. Now, then there was this doctor, his name was Eric Farouk. He was undertaking his postdoctoral research at Nottingham University, and he heard of the Delphos case. And he had an interest in the UFO phenomena, so he was put in touch with the original investigator, which was back to Ted Phillips. So Ted sent him several grams of the material that he had originally collected. And when he collected it, he kept it in, if you remember, like 35 millimeter film used to come in the little bitty opaque containers. He kept it in there. So he sent Dr. Farouk a sample through that. And Dr. Farouk, he examined the soil to try and uncover what was an interesting fact about it, which was it repelled water. And so when he got it, he half expected, he'd find a logical reason, but he was pleasantly surprised to discover there was an air sensitive compound having rather special qualities that eventually led him to conclude that its presence actually supported the alleged UFO encounter, which is really exciting. I thought it was.
Yeah, that's good news.
It is. So with this in mind, we'll go back and we'll talk about what actually happened in Delphos. So this event occurred November 2nd, 1971, about 7 p.m., which would be Central Standard Time. A 16-year-old boy, his name was Ronald or Ronnie Johnson. He was doing chores at his father's farm, and he heard this rumbling noise. So he stepped out of a small shed that he was in to see what was going on. And what he saw was this illuminated object, and it was hovering beneath a tree about 75 feet away. And the object had it had an estimated diameter of about 9 feet, so it was relatively small, and it appeared to be about 10 feet high. Let's see here. There's Ronnie and his dad right here. Okay, so here is a artist rendering. Actually, it's the author's rendering. Kind of showing what it seemed to, about the shape and size of it. And it made a rumbling noise that sounded kind of like a washing machine. You know how it vibrates when it's out of balance? Mm-hmm. That's what it sounded like. So Ronnie describes this object as being multicolored with blue, red, and orange glows. Does that sound a little familiar? About its entire surface as it hovered 2 to 5 feet off the ground. And he also observed that there was a bright glow beneath the object in the ground, or between the object and the ground, as a shimmering material was falling out of the object. And the boy said that it hurt his eyes when he was looking directly at it. And for several days after, his eyes were kind of painful and he was having headaches. But after a few minutes, the object begins to move off, passes over a nearby shed about 4 feet, at which point it emitted a high-pitched sound like that of a jet aircraft and took off. Let me move to the next one here. So here's kind of an idea of what it looked like when it took off.
It looks like a hot roll.
Oh, it does, doesn't it?
It does.
Muffin. Yeah.
We need some butter.
Need some butter. Now, Ronnie briefly, he lost his vision while he was observing this thing. It was that bright, but afterwards his sight returned, and he looked into the sky and he could see the bright light receding into the distance. So he ran back to the farm and he told his parents, what he'd seen, and they didn't believe him, but, he was really agitated. So they all went out and they all observed it. In the southern sky, they saw a bright luminescent object receding in the distance, bearing the color of an arc welder, which is it's kind of a bluish, whitish, hurt your eyes. Too. Yeah, very bright. And it was estimated to be at least half the size of the full moon, which could also be seen in the southeastern sky at the same time. So although this was the last time they saw the object, until another witness, his name was Lester Ernsbarger. He was a reserve police officer in Minneapolis, Kansas. It's like 10 miles south of Delphos. He called into his base and reported a bright light in the sky, which he had observed about 7:30 p.m. in the northern sky from his position. So, there's an independent correlation right there, which before I hit on this, I didn't realize that someone else had seen something at the same time. So I thought that was interesting. But, so there's that possible correlation there. And this kind of shows an outline of where the house is in regards to where the object was and the flight path and things like that.
It was really surrounded by trees. I never realized it was pretty much right in the middle of all of those trees.
It doesn't seem to have been very fast either.
I've seen the one picture where it's right where the burn mark is right next to that tree, which I'd always wondered about. But it's like, how did it wind up right there amongst all those trees? It's very strange.
Maybe it was hiding.
Yeah, that was my first impression. It was
That's
trying to
funny.
stay out of sight,
Maybe it
cover.
was.
and it wasn't moving very fast. Maybe it was injured. Maybe it was alive.
Maybe it was sneaking
Maybe it
up on the
was gonna
sheep.
Maybe it was going to do some sheep mutilation.
Ooh. So, okay, so the Johnson family, they walked to the area where it had been seen. And as they approached it, they saw the ring of soil, which we'll talk about more, over which it had hovered. They saw it glowing in the dark. Remember, it was like 7:30 in the evening, so it was getting dark. And portions of the nearby trees were also glowing, which makes sense if it was right there in between all of that. The glowing ring so impressed Mrs. Johnson that she ran back to the house and grabbed a Polaroid camera, and she took a photo of it. And I have that here. There it is. And this was with no flash attachment. So it was glowing.
Wow.
Which is really interesting. The light was described as bright enough to have read a newspaper by. She only had one exposure remaining in the camera. Isn't that always the case?
Of course.
Well, there was only what 12.
Yeah, there wasn't
exposures
many anyway.
in a pack. So,
But she only had that one exposure remaining, and she could see the illuminated ring through the viewfinder well enough to get the camera positioned. And the family claimed that the glow from the ring lasted long enough to be visible even the following night. So it hung around. So Mrs. Johnson, she proceeds to actually touch the ring. And then she described that it had like a cool, slick, crust-like texture, as if the soil was crystallized, as well as being pitted with little tiny craters all over the place or holes in the surface. And they noticed an unfamiliar odor on their fingers and immediately experienced a numbing effect, similar to like that of a local anesthetic, which took several days or weeks to wear off, which is pretty crazy. I'm not sure I would have touched it barehanded.
it almost sounds biological, really.
Kind of does, doesn't it? Yes, definitely. Wow. The Johnson family, they reported the alleged event to the local sheriff. He came out and he took samples and a photograph of the ring the next day, which is here. This is the picture.
Yeah, this is the famous one that everybody knows.
Yeah, it's just not very big.
No, it doesn't look big at all. And let's see. And then Ted Phillips arrives on the scene about a month later. So in regards to UFO reports, that seems like a really long time. But honestly, if he got there within a month in the 70s, that's not bad.
Right.
No.
So he got there, he was able to interview the family, and the ring's still there. So he was able to measure and sample the ring soil. And then his initial report emphasized the credibility of the witnesses and the puzzling nature of the ring, which now at this point was displaying a pronounced water repellent character, so much so that it was still covered by unmelted snow in contrast to the surrounding muddy environment. And this water repellent property extended in places up to 14 inches below the surface. And it lasted for some months afterwards, which is pretty wild.
Oh, wow.
And the ring
That's
had
a common crop circle thing.
Yeah. The ring had an unaffected portion at its northwestern edge, while the hole was elongated towards the southwest or southeast. Sorry. And they did a rendering of that. Oh, hang on. So we'll go through these real quick. This is like 16 hours later. It's still looking like that. And then a considerable amount of time later, the ring is still there, even though there's growth inside where it wasn't, which is interesting. Okay, so this is the rendering they did of the dimensions of the ring soil. And you can see how on one side, it's a lot thicker than it is on the other. So
was that in the direction that it took off?
It was, yes. They checked the weather conditions prevailing at the time, and it showed the wind direction and the speed to be 290 degrees and 8 miles an hour, respectively, suggesting a possible wind spreading effect when it took off. So yeah, you were correct. Absolutely. So I thought that was interesting. And there
That
were
is.
It is
several
interesting.
corroborating factors which combined to make a really powerful case for the existence of the UFO. The first one being there was close-up observation of the glowing, hovering UFO with a simultaneous glow seen between the object and the ground. And then you have the multiple witness observation of the glowing object seen in the sky after it departed. And then you have multiple witness observation of the glowing ring allegedly left behind by the UFO after it departed. And then you've got the Polaroid that was taken within minutes of its alleged formation, showing the glow. And then you've got a photograph taken by the local sheriff the next morning of the white colored 8-foot diameter ring reportedly left behind. And then you've got measurements subsequently taken of the ring soil, which reveal a clear skewing towards the wind direction that prevailed at the time of the sighting. And you've got subsequent chemical analysis of the ring soil, which revealed that the presence of a highly water soluble and potentially light emitting compound was present. And you've got the ability to use this data to formulate a model that explains all the above effects, invoking an unknown technology and suggesting in turn the presence of an unknown aerial object. So all those things together, all those things separately are interesting, but you've got 8 or 9 things together. Well, 8 different things that point towards it right there.
Yeah.
So Dr. Farouk, he went on to publish his findings in 1989, and he attempted to publish mainstream scientific journals, but they have been unsuccessful. And I don't know if he's still trying to date. He did go on to write a book about them, and he ended up self-publishing it in 2014. And it is called The Compelling Scientific Evidence of UFOs. And it has all of these photos and renderings in it.
It's interesting to note. So Salmon's report, the farmer at a Mercator, with the weird little, it kind of reminds me of this, only his had the pipe sticking out of it.
Yeah.
I didn't mention it in my stuff because I know we don't have time to sit there and go into deep research on all these, but it also left a burnt ring on the ground where it killed the grass off.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, though, nobody went and studied it. And I wonder, these two seem so similar, if maybe they weren't from kind of the same situation, maybe?
It could have been
20 years apart.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
There might be one more slide.
Maybe it was better developed and that's why the pipe's gone.
That's right.
Maybe so, yeah. Maybe so.
It upgraded.
Power, not full power today.
Yeah.
This right here is interesting. They pulled soil to try to grow things in it. And you've got the growth in the normal soil taken 5 feet from the ring, where you can see the I don't know, vegetation of what kind that is. I don't know what that is.
Right, bean sprouts or something easy to grow.
Yeah. And then you can see on the right-hand side, they used ring soil and nothing grows there. That's pretty interesting, I thought. And then this was in there. I thought it was a fun one to put in because it shows the entire family. It shows Mrs. Johnson as well. And you can tell this was a while later because there's actual weeds growing up in the center of the circle. But it's kind of hard to see. But if you squint one eye and cross the other, you can kind of see the circle in that really bad photo.
That taller growth on the left in the middle of the circle, is that what we're seeing?
Yeah, that's the weeds. Yeah. So it's closer to Mrs. Johnson, it looks like.
Yeah.
What it looks like today.
You know what's interesting, and it wasn't included in what I had here, but the ring still exists to this day. Mm-hmm. But because there was so much traffic and so many people wanting to come see it, they put dirt over top of it and covered it up. But they have, on at least one occasion, dug it up. So, and it's still there.
It's still under there.
Yeah. Mr. Johnson has
a lot of samples as well. How much of the original ground is even left, Yeah,
it's true.
Right.
I know at one point they took samples to K-State and ran some tests on it there too. But Mr. Johnson has passed. I'm not sure about Mrs. Johnson, and I know the son, I believe he's still alive, Ronnie. But he's older now too, so because this was in the 70s. So he'd be in his 60s, probably early 70s.
I know that like there's a niece. There's a niece that still owns the property. When Astonishing Legends podcast did their story on it, they spoke to her a bit.
Oh, cool.
She wouldn't come on, but they spoke to her a little bit. And she said, yeah, it's still under there, but they kind of keep it covered in dirt and they don't allow anyone on the property anymore.
I bet that's where I'm remembering that from then, because I had forgotten they did a podcast on that. But yeah, that's all I got.
That's all you got?
Great.
That's all I got.
Yes.
Wow, that gets us started.
Yeah.
That gets us a good start.
So the Delphos ring is really the starter for this huge UFO flap. Put my glasses back on. That happened in the Dighton, Kansas area. So if you'll go back to the map that I did, you get to see my handmade map. This is the UFO triangle of Kansas, right? All my little mishmash marks because I couldn't figure out how to get the dot to go. So there you go. Okay, so starting out here. So Dighton, Kansas. You can see that on the furthest to your left there is the little Dighton area. Now, these are pretty small towns. Larned is a bit bigger. Phillipsburg is tiny. I think the biggest town in there is probably Hayes, which you see kind of fall right in the middle of that furthest line to your right.
Hayes
right?
is good size, yeah.
Yeah.
And
if you look down at the very right-hand bottom, you're going to see Wichita. So you can kind of get a general idea of where this is sitting within Kansas. All right. So in 1972, this is the year we're going to talk about right now, there was over 40 UFO sightings just in Kansas. And I'm not including other states because it was a big year for UFOs. Just 40 reported in Kansas. And those are just the reported ones. Keep in mind, I mean, I call it the Brian Terrell thing, but for every 10 actual sightings, usually only one is ever reported of the 10. So imagine how many sightings there must have been that were never reported. So why Dighton is the flap center is because Dighton itself had dozens of them all within its little vicinity there. So everybody credits Delphos as starting the flap. It was the year previous, in November. This one really started kicking up in February in this area here. So here's the beginning of this flap. So it continued through the next few months in this relatively condensed triangle you're looking at here. So we've got Larned, Dighton, and Phillipsburg with Hayes there in the middle, and it's going to cluster around these little towns. I think it tends to cluster not because that's where more sightings were, but because the people, the really rural people outside of these little towns, didn't talk about this stuff. There was probably
your sightings are around the population. You've got to have people to see it before it can get.
Yeah. So the majority of these reports, why this flap is so interesting, the majority of the reports describe the exact same object. That's why this is so interesting. So they describe a fiery red or orange or a fiery red orange ball of light with white lights coming off of it. And it's nearly the same. So you're going to get a red one with white lights, or an orange one with white lights, or a red-orange one with white lights, or white lights with an orange popping out of the side of it. It's all basically the same. This particular one was seen, of course, outside of this triangle area, but not as much. Actually, clear down to Arc City had several sightings of this exact object.
Wow.
Yeah. Great Bend, Colby, Stockton, clear almost to Wichita, they had some sightings out that way. Just to give you an idea. So like a rampage was happening of this one particular one, or maybe it was a group of ones that looked the same. So what kicked it off in Dighton, it actually happened to the chief of police there in Dighton. The poor dude. He actually spent an evening attempting to chase this thing down. So he saw it up ahead of him when he was in his cruiser. Thought it was very odd to see this huge, bright, glowing, hovering thing just sitting in the middle of the road. And he drove up to it, and right before he got close enough, it coasted off a little bit further down the road. And then they proceeded to do this all night long. And at some points, he actually revved his car up to nearly 100 miles an hour trying to chase it. And it was literally just playing with him. It would stay up ahead of him and then, I guess, kind of grow tired, and it would fall back and come up and stay at pace with his car beside him, like looking in his window. And then when he would start to slow down, it would rush back forward and get in front of his car again. Right? So they did this all
Sounds like
evening.
teenagers. So
Yeah.
we have teenage aliens.
So he starts to slow down, and he realizes it's slowing down with him, and he's like, oh, okay. So he finally rolls to a stop, and it stops with him up further ahead, and he decides to call it in. He's gotten the nerve. He's like, I've got to call this in. And the minute he went to go call it in, it's like it knew, and it shot off. So he went ahead and called it in, didn't see it, started to go off on his way, made a turn. There it was waiting for him again. He started to speed up to it. It started to do the same thing. So he slowed down and stopped. He went to call it in again. And the minute he went to go call it in, off it went again, like it knew somehow that he was calling this in. Eventually, the cat and mouse game ended, and he went off on his way. He actually thought it might have been something to do with the military. He thought maybe something was in taking photos, or like infrared photos or something like that. They actually checked in with Topeka Air Force Base and McConnell at Wichita to check to see if anything was happening like that, and they claimed they had nothing like that and weren't even out running anything even in that area that night. Of course, who knows if they actually did or not. So immediately after this incident with Mr. Shelton, that was his name, the residents in the area began experiencing this thing in all of its glory. It chased people. It bopped the tops of their cars. It followed them home. It burnt their cows. It apparently had some kind of a heat source underneath of it.
Did it at least one crop circle too?
Yes, it did. So I'll get to that. Like, there's just so many. Like, it had a fondness for the teens in the area too. The teens would be driving home late at night or out cruising, and it would find them and spend some fun attacking them until they went home.
That's actually very similar to the old Mothman stories in West Virginia.
Yes, it's very reminiscent of Mothman.
It's like a cross between Mothman and a really ornery spooklight.
Yeah, kind of. So I wrote down a couple of incidents because they kind of fell within the same family, so it was easy to kind of like follow it through. And you guys have probably, I can't remember where if I got this out of, no, I didn't get it out of that book. Okay. So one incident had two teens coming home from a basketball game. It was around 10 p.m. at night, and they watched something bright in the sky dance around and get brighter and then fade out and then get brighter again and fade out. This is what this thing did. It liked to play. And then suddenly it came straight at them and stopped within 100 yards of the very front of their car. Like, they slammed on the brakes. This thing is like staring them down. They said the light got so intense that they couldn't see out their front windshield. Like, it was blinding them. Like, I imagine like semi lights staring straight at you. They said the object quickly zoomed away right after that and disappeared, and then reappeared dead to the east of them and followed them behind the tree line as they drove home. They actually stayed in their car for a little bit when they got home because they were afraid to get out of the vehicle for fear of what it would do. but they got inside and seemed to forget about it. So one of the brothers of one of the friends had his own experiences with it over that entire summer. He was a field hand and was in the late crews that would come in the evenings and bale hay. And he saw this along with the other crew more times than he could count on his hands. It would flitter through the fields while they were working.
Oh.
Right?
That's
And they
wild.
were afraid of it because it could set the hay on fire. Because
Yeah.
apparently
sure.
this thing
Yeah.
was hot. Right? So around the same time as the two friends' car incident, right? A crop circle popped up in the field of that home that they had returned to. I don't know which friend's house it was. But that right around the same time, a crop circle popped up in the field. The circle was burned into the green wheat and was reported in the news as 20 feet in diameter and had a very bad, strange smell that had nothing to do with burnt wheat.
Ooh.
So
Like a chemical kind of smell.
it did not explain it any further than that.
Just that it was odd.
Yeah. I don't know.
And that she hasn't smelled it since. So whatever it was.
It was not something common.
No.
Yeah.
Right. So it wouldn't be like a kerosene, like a jet fuel kind of a thing or something like that
No.
she would have recognized.
Mhm.
Yeah. So, like I said, dozens of sightings were reported. Of course, with even more sightings going unreported, due to people just not wanting to talk about it. And the fact that the incidences were becoming such commonplace that, you weren't calling it in anymore because it had happened, the last 3 nights too, You just kind of stopped doing that. So how many times did this happen? I have no idea. So, in February of this year, while all of this is going on, Larned, which is down at the bottom of the triangle there, was having the same issues. Not quite as many, but quite a number of them. And it was the same type of object, that red orangey with the white lights, chasing cars, coming down real low in front of the road in front of them, and all of that cat and mouse game kind of stuff. I wrote down a little bit of the incidents. In March, a teen played cat and mouse with the object on his way home. He couldn't shake the light. He actually got chased by it this time. The next day, they found the wires for the corral in their yard twisted up and in a pile, and their milk cows had singed and burnt backs. So,
Wow.
oh, that's nice, Cord.
Thought that was hilarious.
In July of that year, the same object was sighted by multiple independent witnesses near Minneapolis, Kansas, not Minneapolis, which witnessed it doing aerobatics. So it was like doing swirls and leaps and jumps in the sky that, frankly, no plane back then at that time could accomplish. I don't think any plane now could accomplish some of the stuff that they said it was doing. In August, a bright bowl-shaped object hovered near the ground at Colby. It's the same one again. It's the same blinding white light, illuminated the entire area, and then it shot straight up and disappeared. So it's its same old MO, right? And this continued and finally died out towards the end of October, and then it went to nothing.
Radio silence kind of thing.
Radio silence and literal radio silence. So if you look at your UFO sightings and stuff in the Kansas area, it really goes dead for about a year after that. It's really quiet, except for a couple ones that may or may not be made up in some certain places, but it really just goes quiet. So I'm unsure what the thing is for that.
That's interesting.
Anywho, we should probably think about coming to a stopping point soon, shouldn't we?
Well,
Yeah,
we've
I
got
think
at
we're
least a
going
whole
to
nother
have
show,
to. Yeah,
maybe
absolutely.
two.
And honestly, the 37th parallel could be its own show.
Hmm.
Yeah.
That and local reports were in our area. We could add
Yeah.
those in too.
If you want to, I have one more flap, a short flap that I
Absolutely.
could do.
Yeah.
If we,
Absolutely.
yeah, I think we got time to squeeze that in. So first of all,
Oh,
um,
whoops.
no, you can actually show that. Like, I'm gonna
Okay.
buzz through this little section real quick.
Okay.
So back in 2000, late 2011, 2012, Kansas City had a flap. You notice my flap, right? Out of all of the reports, this picture is the only one that I found that had any kind of credibility to it. Unfortunately, that entire flap's been shot down because they were putting up brand new weather balloons at the time around the Kansas City area, and they have shown them. For once, the weather balloon situation is actually correct. It's not just, it's swamp gas. They were literal water balloon or weather balloons. I didn't post any of the pictures of them because it's a weather balloon and people were just going nutty. This one here was spotted in early 2012 out near the airport area of Kansas City on the Missouri side. It was the only credible one I could find. What it is, I have no idea. It was taken in pitch black. There was no moon out.
Hmm.
So it was radiating its own light.
It's like a spider.
Oh, don't tell me
Yes.
that. I don't like spiders.
Not
Huge
space
spiders.
spiders.
It's better
Space
than
spiders.
space herpes.
Ah.
Yes.
Ooh, let's
So
change this picture. There we
you're
go.
gonna if you look up
I'm gonna hang this.
online, you're gonna see tons of these supposed UFO pictures from the 2012 Kansas City flap. And it's all literally weather balloons. Now, mind you, they are funky looking weather balloons. They were kind of more oblong, like ovally shaped than mushrooms
Yeah.
shaped around like we're used to.
Probably looked more like
And
a Japanese lantern than.
yes, and you will actually find the hilarious thing is like 99% of them were taken during the day when you could see the sun reflecting off of them, and they were just far
Right.
enough away that you weren't quite sure what it was you were looking at. So I'm just gonna put that out there. There's been some books written about and stuff, and I'm a little like, what are you people thinking? So there we go. Moving on away from that, and I don't have any pictures for this next flap that I'm going to discuss. It's
Oh, we're good.
interesting. I just found this today. I found this fantastic, and when we list our show notes and our references, I will put this in here because this place was excellent. I found a gentleman who actually, I don't know how long he spent doing this, but he cataloged and listed every known reported UFO sighting since like the 1400s in order
Wow.
with all of their, oh my god, I was like in heaven. I spent like I told Pam, I was like 3 hours. I was staring at this thing just going through it and like came up out of it and was like, where have I been for 3 hours? There was a flap in Kansas in 1897 that I had never heard about. And it is so very interesting. So this one started in February of 1897 and it started out in Valley Falls, Kansas. A resident saw the outlines of an airship. Now, I say airship, so think UFO. So depending on what time period we're in, things change. So they called it an airship back then because we didn't have like what we have now. Saucers and well, heck, the term UFO didn't come in until Project Blue Book. That's when that
Right.
was introduced,
Yeah.
right?
Air-
Kind of like
airship
how
back
now we have to
then-
call them UAPs. So
airship back then could have been like a balloon or a Zeppelin
Dirigible.
style blimp,
mhm.
kind of a
Or
thing.
frankly, anything that flew in the sky because they didn't know what else to call it.
Right.
Yeah, but minus birds and things they knew. So Valley Falls, Kansas. Yeah, so the residents there see the outline of an airship behind a very large light that passed over the town. It was seen for the next 4.5 hours traveling in a straight line over into Nebraska.
Wow.
So
Wow.
it was literally watched that whole way. And why it was behind a huge bright light, I don't know. I don't know what that was. So moving on into March, the 23rd through the 26th in Belleville, Kansas, the same lighted airship was seen moving quickly and lighting up the city and the houses like an immense meteor. So they said it lit up everything like it was daylight inside of this city.
Huh.
It hovered over the city for a half an hour and then changed direction, and then it came back the next 4 nights in a row and did it again. Right?
God. Yeah.
Right after that, March 27th, so the Belleville one ended on the 26th, so the last night it was there. On the 27th in Topeka, Kansas, a large oblong-shaped object with blood red lights appeared on the western edge of the city. It hovered for 20 minutes before disappearing. It was actually seen and reported by John W. Leedy, who happened to be the governor of Kansas at the time,
Oh, wow.
and the editor of the Topeka Capital newspaper, Harold T. Chase, who were together. They were standing on the front steps of the Capitol building visiting at the time, and
So
they
these
reported it in.
reputable people that were
Yes.
Yeah.
reporting it.
Yes.
You would
Yes.
think that
Among
those
other
people would
people.
be
Yeah.
very reliable.
Yes.
You would hope they would be. Yeah, for sure.
Yes.
Well, yes, that's
So
the hope.
into March, into April 1st, Kansas City, Kansas, they saw a strange, huge object zigzagging with lights on it on the south edge of the city. So this one was like, I'm guessing cigar shaped, but kind of how they explained it. And it was
Huh.
zigzagging with lights on it. Right? Everest, Kansas, that same day, April 1st, reports of a 30-foot long canoe. They called it a canoe. I'm guessing probably cigar shaped.
Cigar shaped.
Right.
Yeah.
Or Zeppelin shaped or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They explained it had little tiny wings on the edge of it and super bright lights. So it's the bright lights that are really getting me here. Back in that era, it wasn't quite easy to have these huge
Right. There
shows
there
of
certainly
lights.
were like blimp style airships that were rare, but
Yeah.
they did exist. But to have lights on them that were bright enough to illuminate the
Yeah.
ground and light up for miles and miles, there wasn't anything like that around. So I don't know.
No, arc lights had not been invented yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would have been something fire based. It would have basically,
Yeah.
giant oil lanterns or
Or
something.
an acetylene lamp or something like that.
Yeah.
Like they used on the trains. Which were actually quite bright, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
The last one happened June 1st in Emporia, Kansas, which is pretty close to
Pretty
us.
close, yeah.
This one was another cigar-shaped object flying towards the northwest at about 300 feet, they guessed. Suspended, and they said suspended, but I don't know what they mean suspended by. If there was something above it or what. But this one was also covered in electrical lights, and this one had a roving search beam that came out of it. And they said it got close enough that they could see something humanish sitting on top of it.
And what year was this again?
18. Let me get back to 1897.
okay, there would have been electrical lights then, so
But
Maybe it
bright
was
enough
suspended
on
by
a
its
carried. I don't know.
extension cord. I don't know.
I don't know. It's weird. I did add in one more. So that's the end of that flap, which I thought was ever so interesting because I've never heard about it. Especially that one where it kept coming back into Belleville like 4 days in a row and doing the same damn thing.
That's pretty different.
Yeah.
There's quite a few, late 1800s, airship stories all over the country. Of course, the famous one down in Texas where it hits the windmill and gets knocked down and all that whole thing. But I didn't realize Kansas had anything similar to that. That's interesting. This was happening all over the place.
Yeah.
I want to say I've heard of Bellevue, but wasn't aware of the particulars.
Interesting. Might look into that one a little bit more and see if we can't dig up anymore
Okay.
on that particular one because it interests me. The only other thing I found that I thought I'd just throw in, it's not a part of the flap, and it's actually up into 1926. I had heard little bits of this before, but I'd never seen an account from it. So this one happened in January of 1926. Bert Acosta, I don't know if you guys have heard of this one,
Right.
was flying out of Wichita, Kansas towards Colorado Springs when he saw 6 or more objects that looked like manhole covers flying off his starboard wing 600 feet away. They kept pace for 5 minutes before changing course and flying away. And there was, of course, more to it than that. But I just thought that was interesting.
wild.
It's the first time I've heard them called manhole covers.
Manhole.
So,
Well, discs. Yeah. I mean,
It's a good visual, though.
Yeah, but I mean, it's
Yeah.
that denotes basically like a coin where it's just flat edge.
very
Yes.
thin. Yeah.
and a grouping too. That's really weird.
It
Yeah,
is.
like in formation.
Mhm.
Yeah. All right. Do we have any more before we move on to the notebook game?
I think we are good.
I think we're
It's a
good.
really
Yep.
interesting one. There's so many of them. Oh my gosh.
Oh, yeah. Like we've not touched.
No, we
Tonight.
had to bring it in big time.
Yeah. Like, I mean,
So
literally, I have a notebook that has just UFO reports in it, and I don't even have like a lot of the details with it. It's basically date, place, time, and a little tag of what they saw in reference to, some other work that I'm going to be doing. But it's just page after page after page after page because and you don't even know which ones are correct or which ones might actually be real or which ones were falsified.
It's just listings.
Yes.
Just listings. So, I mean, even in our area, we have so many. And we'll talk about some of the ones in our area in a couple weeks when we do the 37th parallel section of this is when that stuff will come into play.
I'm looking forward to that.
And hopefully Enzo will deign to come back and be with
I
us
would
on
love
that.
to. I mean, I didn't really add that much. I don't feel to this show, but I was happy to sit in on it because I'm amazed. I was like writing down. It's like UFO Cold Cases, Kansas. I'm gonna go buy this book. It's only like $8 on Amazon.
Yeah.
It's free on Kindle Unlimited.
It's
Yeah.
so
Actually,
very
interesting.
What's funny is
too.
it covers the years 1947 to 1961, and whenever I think of like those years, I think, I wonder if old Doc Jansen up in
Yeah.
up
And
in
a lot of these were up there in his neck of the woods.
Yeah.
check that
For
out.
sure.
He probably looked into them.
back in those days. Yeah.
Yeah. And we'll
Okay.
definitely discuss a little bit of Doc Jansen and all of that next week towards the tail end and kind of lead into because we're all going to be talking at the Geneseo. What is it? Geneseo or Geneseo?
Gonna see you.
Geneseo UFO Kansas UFO Day Festival in
Which
July.
happens to be
So-
on July 6th, the same day as our first case that we talked about tonight.
Yes.
I do believe.
Exactly. Yep. The one
That's
in
awesome.
Place and Earth.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, we've got people queuing up already. Yes. Roswell,
Ready for the
Kansas. That
notebook
is
game.
such a cool cup. Okay, let's see. Rick popped
Yeah.
up first. Notebook 4, page 37.
All right. 2, 3, 4. Ugh. All right. 37. Let me flip through here. Talk amongst yourselves.
Dun, 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 dun.
This is one of those subjects when you get started on it, where do you stop?
Oh, you
It's
never
so
stop. I mean, you could make a whole show just about this stuff, and some people have.
Well, yeah.
Oh, yeah,
There's
just
entire shows
an
on it.
entire podcast. Yeah.
Are these the things that you were planning on talking about up in Geneseo on UFO Day? Just famous UFO sightings and things like that? Kansas?
Maybe we were really talking about 37th parallel stuff. So
Okay.
it just depends. He hasn't contacted us yet on exactly what
If
he
he
wants us to
decides
do.
to have us do two things, we could do both.
Yeah, because this would be some of these would be really good to bring up.
Maybe
Oh,
we need
yeah.
to
Yeah.
invite Jim on the show before then.
We
Oh,
need to,
yeah.
don't we?
Considered
For
that. We
sure.
didn't know if he'd be real savvy with the computer stuff. I don't know. Maybe we could record him that day and add it to
Yeah. I might
future
have to
show.
try.
Oh, yeah,
to
B-roll.
set everything up for maternity.
Yeah.
Or we could go to
Anywho.
Lindsborg and then run through.
You just
So
want to go
Over
eat
to
lunch there
Tennessee.
in Lindsborg.
Well, I mean, I'm kind of planning on it. I'm not lying.
Road trip for sure.
Okay. The page you asked for is on Tulpas. Notebook
on
4, page
Tulpas.
37 is on
Nice.
Tulpas are cool.
So tulpas are of Tibetan origin, are a thought form. A being that begins in the imagination becomes a tangible reality and sentient. Tulpas are created deliberately or unintentionally from the thoughts of numerous people. So, anybody who's listening, if you've watched our show at all, you have heard us mention tulpas before. It's a nice catch-all term for things kind of invented by people by accident. Slender Man is a good
You're bringing it
tulpa.
into existence. Yeah.
Yeah, you've brought it
Yeah.
into existence, and we have a lot of theories on how that works. Quantum theory stuff mixed in with that, quantum mechanics to create something. We've even considered that perhaps these things actually do exist in parallel lines, and our thought forms have brought it across into our area.
Called it basically.
Yeah, some people believe that you can't create anything new. Everything that's will ever be has already been created, but it exists somewhere, and we just simply bring it in, kind of like the whole artist thing. Some people think that artists are actually just a conduit or a portal for things that exist elsewhere, and they're tasked with bringing those new things into the new line. So
your muse could actually be something on a different alternate dimension.
Yeah, I'm not going to go ahead and read through this whole page because it will bore you, because I have a lot of notes on the Copenhagen model and quantum mechanics, and you will probably fall asleep. So we're going to move on.
Or your head will explode.
Okay, let's see. The next one is Cord.
Okay.
And he had Notebook 2, page 2.
Okay. Page 2, making it easy on me.
I know, that's pretty nice of him, isn't it?
He's a good egg.
So this page is on Bigfoot sightings in Kansas.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yes.
That is good.
This is the listing. This page is on sightings from 1977 through 1991. So we've got Independence, Caney, Chautauqua County, Chautauqua, Ark City, Baxter Springs, Coffeyville, Fort Scott, Galesburg, St. Paul, Uniontown, Fort Scott, Lebo, Pittsburgh, Osage City, and Paola, Kansas on this list.
But there's no Bigfoot in Kansas.
Apparently there is.
Not at all.
Yep. Interesting to note, the one in Coffeyville wasn't actually inside of Coffeyville. It was literally in the Verdigris River.
Oh.
They found him standing in the river.
Huh?
He was getting fish or something. Or a boot, whatever was floating by.
I'd like to hear that story. That sounds fun.
Well, they have been known to make fish traps out of stone.
Oh, there you go.
So,
do we have any others?
We do. Ginger has Notebook 5, page 23.
Okay.
Now that I know
I really enjoyed the show where we
rocks. Thank you.
where we played the notebook game to decide what we were going to do on the Fringe. It was one of my favorite shows, actually.
Everybody liked that show.
Yeah,
that was a good one.
All right, so this page is on mass disappearances.
No.
Oh, nice.
Okay. This particular page is on the Spanish War of Succession in 1701 through 1714.
Oh, no, we lost Enzo.
Oh. 4,000 trained, fully equipped men marched into the Pyrenees Mountains and have never been heard from since.
4,000.
4,000 walked into the Pyrenees Mountains and never came back. They never found any bodies.
That big of a group, you're going to find something.
You're going to find, even if they died, like had some kind of cataclysmic accident, there would be bodies.
Mass grave or a giant population like 50 miles away where they all deserted or something.
Yeah, they were fully equipped too. So I'm not talking about just what they were wearing. They were hauling war equipment with them. Whatever you would have
So
from the
at least that would have been
1700s.
horses, the whole 9 yards.
Horses, a 4,000 member trained army.
Wow.
With all of their supplies. Yes.
I wonder when they ended up.
Oh. Kooky for whoever the people were they showed up at, knocking at their door. Where are we?
We're the army. We're here to help.
Yeah, something. In 1940, 3,000 Chinese soldiers were sent to fight the Japanese, and they disappeared on their way too.
How many?
3,000.
3,000. That's another large group.
Now,
that's
you tell me how you would get 3,000 men to leave their posts. You would think that there would at least be one in there that was a
if it was like 30 to 40, I could see maybe like, you know what, we're all gonna die if we go here, so let's just skip down the river here.
Right, yeah.
Take off our uniforms and just be deserters, but we'll still be alive.
Yeah, melt in.
You could sort of maybe see that, but not thousands of people.
Yeah, I'm not seeing it.
Yeah. And the last one I have on here is in 1858, 650 French troops disappeared while marching on Saigon and French Cochinchina. Disturbances had broken out in Saigon, and to restore the order, the French sent 500 French legionnaires and 150 first-class Safais to the city. Not one of the men returned, and none ever reached the city in the first place. So somewhere in between...
they blipped out of existence.
Gone.
Wow. I mean, it's a little more believable.
Exactly.
Yeah. Because Scotty of the jungles and stuff, but
yeah.
That might be my favorite one that you've done, Enzo. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I still got to sit down with him some weekend and figure out how to use OBS right.
That is so cool.
All right. What do we got next?
We have Stacy with Notebook 3, page 24.
Alrighty.
Oh, I missed Rick's comment. He said he has stories about Bigfoot around Coffeyville, but he's never seen him.
I'd like to hear those stories.
Right.
There's some interesting ones over that way.
Come around in September and tell us those stories.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, stop by and talk to Brian. He'll be glad to log them.
Yeah.
Hold on, I got pages stuck together.
That was plug the event.
Okay. Yes, I got it. This page is on Black-Eyed Kids.
Ooh.
Yes. This one in particular is about Black-Eyed adults and the Men in Black connection to them.
Oh, nice.
Are they grays in people suits?
Where's your flashy thing?
And I have a list of attributes. Black eyes or missing eyes. Usually children come in pairs, speak like adults, make odd references like I don't have a gun, usually ask permission for entry, always disappear, make people sick, and sometimes speak telepathically.
Interesting.
There's always the don't invite them in thing, as I recall.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Don't invite them in. Yeah, and it touches on Brian Bethel and his story, because he was kind of coined as the originator of the Black-Eyed Kids, and that it was a creepypasta story, but that's not true. They were here long before Brian Bethel told his story, and his was not a creepypasta story. His was a true story. It still freaks him out so bad. If you get up online, you can see some interviews with him telling his story, and he still gets shaky when he's telling it.
Yeah, his eyes get wide.
Yeah, he spotted his. He went to he was outside of a movie theater, and two kids showed up asking for a ride and asking to get into his car. And the thing that he said scared him so much was that while he was in his head thinking, like, hell, I'm going to open this car door for you. I'm never going to open this car door for you. His hand was going for the lock, for the handle.
Yeah, like they were controlling him.
Yeah. And he was just like, "What am I doing? What am I doing?" And it was freaking him out. So yeah, really interesting.
That
One
was
day we will do a Black Eyed Kids. We've done one with Mark and Phil
Yeah.
before.
Yep.
So much fun. I love Black Eyed
It
Kids
was
stuff.
good. Yeah.
They
That's a good
freak me out just a little bit.
Just a little.
Enzo, do you want to choose one?
Oh, book 3, page 11.
Okay. Page 11. All right.
Yeah, Rick, we're looking forward to September. We hope to see you there, man.
All right. This is on the Big Cabin Lions. Have you heard the Big Cabin
Nice.
Lions
I
story,
remember the
Enzo?
big-
That's a good
Yeah.
one.
No idea what the Big Cabin Lions are.
Okay. March 1961, Big Cabin, Oklahoma. Okay. Lions, African lions, not just loose out of the zoo lions. African lions, a pride of them, were seen in the areas along a straight line from Veneta, Oklahoma to Big Cabin, Oklahoma. So, nurses and doctors and patients watched lions cross into the front yard of the Oklahoma State Hospital.
And Vinny.
They roared while they ran across the entire lawn and then flipped out on the other side.
Just
Right?
vanished. Wow.
Yes.
Just ran through a whole pride of lions. Okay. Drivers stopped on the Will Rogers Turnpike for lions that were crossing across the road. Yes. That one, this got reported in Newsweek magazine, though, if you want to go check it out. It literally happened. A farmer reported lions on his property in rural Veneta. The tracks were photographed, although unfortunately, I think they've been lost to time. I've never been able to find the copies of the photos of the tracks. Interestingly enough, as I've researched this, I've got a little bit more to it than this now. This is just kind of like a little note to myself. There were more sightings than that. So one lady on the Will Rogers Turnpike almost wrecked because there was one sitting right on the side of the road eating roadkill. She spotted it and almost went off the road.
As they would.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
Probably the size of the
yeah. The same general vicinity where the farmer reported one on his land, nearly next door, they found the pride of lions killing off all of their chickens in their chicken coop.
Again,
They were
that's
probably
what
like,
lions
ooh,
do.
fast
Chicken
food.
Exactly, right?
Chicken nuggets.
They thought that they had a pride of lions on the loose, like maybe like a circus train had flipped over or something like that. And they literally, within that same week, called in a big game hunt. Like men came in from like Oklahoma City and Tulsa on horses, with big guns, and they got together and rode out like a big game hunt. They didn't find anything.
I'm thinking it was a giant time slip and they were American lions. I've got a picture up here
Hey,
of the American lion, which looks surprisingly quite a bit like the African
Does
lion.
the mane's just a little bit different looking?
Mane's just a little
Yeah.
different.
Huh. Interesting.
They were common throughout North America at one time. So
It could
that's
have
my
been.
personal theory, but
What's
Yes.
interesting
So-
is they slipped in and out, but no
Yeah.
one else seems to have, you
Yeah.
know, just that.
The interesting thing of it, for anybody who doesn't know that area, so the order in which they fell and the times at which they fell, it seemed as if they were traveling up the turnpike area and they would literally pop into existence and then pop back out and then pop back in further down the line and then pop back out and then pop back in again and then pop back out, and that's where it ended. It's never happened again, and it hadn't, as far as I can see, ever happened before. But they call them the Big
it's
Cabin
all like
Lions.
in one day, or is this like over a period?
Yes. Over the period of like 30 minutes, this
Wow.
all happened. Like they were just traveling through really, really fast. These
Wow.
African lions, a whole pride of them,
It's pretty
roaring
freaky.
and doing their thing, and apparently ended with a chicken nugget snack at the end before they left town.
I mean, who doesn't like chicken nuggets?
Exactly.
Now I'm hungry.
All
again.
right. Now you're hungry.
And stuff.
I'm always hungry.
Do we have anything else, or
I think this is probably a pretty good stopping point.
What were you saying, Enzo? Enzo was saying something.
Oh, sorry.
I'd never heard of that one. Thank you so much for sharing that. That's amazing.
That was a
That's
cool
one
one.
of my favorites.
All right.
So are we ready to end out for the night?
I think we are. It looks like we didn't make it to the 37th parallel or some of the local UFO stories.
Yeah.
So we will pick that back up on May 22nd, which is the date of our next show, 2 weeks from tonight.
Yes. Wednesday 22nd at 7 p.m. Central. And we will have Enzo back because now he doesn't have a choice. We're going to make him. And Mark, of course. Yes. And we'll do 37th parallel and more local UFO and all sorts of insanity. You're going to get to hear about that. That's some crazy stuff.
Yeah, I found so much insanity.
Yeah, it's nutty.
Usually
we'll get
in
there
the
though. All right. Okay.
Everybody hanging in there with us too.
Yeah.
Yep,
I'm going to end the show out here. So everybody stay. I know you're starting to try to click out. Don't click out yet. Stay until the very end. Okay. Okay. Thanks for everybody for hanging out with us here on the 37th parallel. Woo-hoo. Thank you to Enzo for joining us and for Mark for joining us. Thank you, boys.
Thank you for having us.
Have you fill out our squares.
We appreciate you.
Remember to like, share, and subscribe and hit the bell and find us on social media. You can find a listing of our show notes, our resources and references on our website, www.bordertownparanormal.com. Underneath the Bordertown Strange button, you'll find at the top. Catch a new show every other Wednesday night at 7 p.m. Central on YouTube, Facebook, and available wherever you listen to your podcast. So check us out there so you can listen to us in the car while you're heading to work. Please send in your show ideas and personal stories. We'd love to hear them, and we will read them live on the show. So you kind of get to be a part of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So with that being said, keep it weird, keep it strange, and remember, it's all connected.
Woo-hoo.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.